definitely should not have been dancing.
It's all right.
It's the Herb and Raj podcast, coming to you live. I'm at an undisclosed location, reportedly near the beach.
Yes.
Raj is stuck at home. Sorry, Raj. Love you though.
I'm home. I am back. Before we get started, I want to shout out to Big Mike for filling in for me last week. I had to take care of some daddy duty things, but I appreciate you, Big Mike, for stepping in, filling the shoes. Did an awesome job as usual, as always. So appreciate you. And Big Mike does have his own podcast, his own YouTube channel as well. So please follow him at Big Mike _Big Mike 27. So shout out to Big Mike. Follow him on all social medias.
Yeah, I don't know when his episode. I know he's got 2 episodes in the book to look at. And I don't think their Thursday night is coming on this week. They're coming on with a big show next week. So shout out to Mike.
Okay.
Cat always holding it down with the big roll tide. Please hit the like and subscribe. We're gonna make a push this summer to get us to at least 200 before the season starts.
Yes.
So
we will get there. We will get there.
Yep. And this is a good segue here with keeping up with our summer series. We've had LSU on, we've had Oklahoma, so of course you see the Boomer Sooner come back, and that'll lead us into tonight.
We're not supposed to say that. We're just supposed to say shout out to Air Raid Mike. We can't read his whole tagline.
Let's go back. Shout out to some random person who says something about BS. A lot of BS.
I don't know what BS. Okay.
So good job for the BS. And Kat, one of our longest time person, always been supporters. Hey, I don't know if you're happy about moving to Colorado. Although there are a couple of reasons to be happy about moving to Colorado if you need, or if you're best friends with Dion. But man, congrats to you and your husband. Man.
Congrats to you and your family. Congrats to your husband. Enjoy Colorado Springs.
Yep. All right, Raj. It's time to get to the most important part of tonight's show: the guest.
Let's do it.
Right? Okay.
Let's do it.
So
hold on. I feel like you need a drum roll. Are you getting ready to do the intro?
I'm about to do the intro, of course. So,
all right, 3, 2, 1.
And of course, keeping in with the new intros, it's 2 truths and a lie, so everybody can figure out what is what with this next.
All right.
Okay. He had a detailed 20-page plan, and if they had followed it, the Pac-12 would still be around. Of course, they ignored it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whenever something goes wrong with the football team, Dan Lanning calls him for advice. Yep. And you know how people get the keys to the city? He has the keys to the whole state. He gets keys to the whole state. Yes.
The whole state of Oregon.
The whole state. Meaning if he walks into an establishment and orders food,
he gets free beer.
You're not allowed to charge him. So
you can't charge him anything.
You can't.
Wow.
If he takes money out of the tip jar, he just gets to walk out with it.
That's actually his money. That's his money.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Welcome to the show, Spencer.
You guys are killing me with that. I've been on a lot of shows and had a lot of intros. That is top 3 all time right there.
How are you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, dude.
How are you?
I don't know if I could be much better. Like if the Mariners finish off this win against the Guardians, I'm gonna be having like the perfect day. The perfect day.
Good, man. That is good to hear.
Good,
I hate to move backwards into some bad news, but I guess we were kind of talking this before we got on. You were locked on Pac-12 last year, Locked on Oregon. That's where I first found you. Tell us about the move to make it Locked on college football instead, and I guess the sad circumstances that are the Pac-12 with all this.
Yeah, well, for all intents and purposes, the Pac-12 is dead. Legally speaking, though, it's still an entity. Oregon State and Washington State are the only 2 members of the conference. I talk all the time on my show about how I feel like they will rebuild that league one day into the premier Group of 5 conference in college football and chase the G5 automatic playoff berth if they're not able to get into the Big 12 or the ACC, and the Big 12 appears to be the better of those 2 places, given it's a lot more stable than the ACC at the moment. But yeah, we had a lot of discussions at the network, myself and my boss and other members of the leadership team about, what to do with the channel. Because, Locked On Pac-12 had, at the time that I recorded the last show, was over 5,000 subscribers, had a couple more thousand subs on the audio side. And, starting a brand new feed didn't really make a lot of sense. And so we landed on essentially a show that covers the biggest stories in the greatest sport on earth, that is college football, that, includes those Pac-12 teams. So any, audience members on audio or on YouTube that, wanted to keep hearing me talk about those schools would still have the opportunity to do so when it became a topic. But we wanted
be
to,
one of those people.
and I appreciate that. And I wanted to, we wanted to expand the reach of the show and have a national college football show. And it's been really fun. We launched that on January 15th was our first episode, and so we're over 5 months into it, and it's been a blast. And getting to talk to so many different hosts, I think, has been my favorite part of it. And what I like most about it is you get different perspectives on fan bases, and different perspectives on how they view other fan bases as well, how they feel about particular games, and there's just always stuff to dive into. So that show, pretty easy to keep it 5 days a week all year round, and it's been really, really fun. And I haven't even covered a game on that show yet, which is my favorite part, which is the best part, and what people statistically engage with the most. So really excited to see about how the show continues to grow and evolve. And I was actually just texting my boss yesterday, like, hey, before the season starts, we have to have a long chat, you and I, about what the content plan is going to be for the season. Because, we did that when the show first started, and how we wanted to do, transfer portal coverage, and then realignment, and talking about teams and all this sort of stuff. And, I've gotten into a good rhythm with that. But then once the season starts, right, at Locked On, we specialize in 25 to 30 minute shows that you can fit on your daily commute to work. And when you're talking about the entire sport, gosh, you got a lot of stuff to work in. Yeah, you got a lot of stuff to work in around that time. So, we haven't devised a specific plan yet, but I love covering the entire sport. I feel very privileged that the network chose me for that position, and I'm loving it and trying to make the most of it every single day.
And I feel like with college football, even when the season isn't actually occurring, like when it's not September through January, there's still stuff to talk about every single month. And things you just mentioned, transfer portal, obviously recruiting is something that happens 24/7. And with that being said, I guess, and I don't mean to interrupt you or jump you, Herb, but as far as recruiting is concerning, like, how is Oregon looking right now? Are there any pieces you're looking, or you're hoping that Oregon's going to pick up soon, or where exactly do you guys stand?
Oregon's recruiting class is, top 20-ish. I think, it kind of bounces back and forth right now between 19th and 20th on the 24/7 Sports high school composite rankings. I like where their class is at. The momentum feels like it's on the precipice of picking up further. They've landed a couple offensive line commits in the last couple of, really just in the last week, in Dimitri Manning, who's, a little bit more of a project, but is just a big guy to play on the interior. And then Zaire Addison, maybe one of the most athletic tackles in the class of 2025. Those are, the offensive line building pieces that they have right now, building blocks of the class. They've already got their quarterback in Achilles Smith Jr., but might be looking to add another one in Ty Hawkins. And, that's a blue chip recruit. And I think you're going to see a lot more positions start to take off. But right now, wide receivers is the strength of the class. You've got a trio of blue chip guys, 5-star Dallas Wilson, and the 4-stars Cooper Perry and Isaiah Mosey. I think Junior Adams is one of the best recruiters in all of college football. That's Oregon's wide receivers coach. And I think they've done a really, really good job. And, I was talking on Locked On Ducks early this week that, if Oregon wants to stay competing for Big Ten and national championships, particularly the second one, history tells you in the last 5 years or so, you have to stack top 10, top 5 classes on top of one another, right? And I think it's especially true when, it's so easy for kids to transfer out. Like you need to have a really, really good amount of depth. Now, Oregon utilizes the transfer portal exceptionally well. There's no doubt about that. But, they've got to look every year to being a top 10 class. I think that's where the standard is to get to the level to put together teams that can win a national championship. And, I think they're more than capable of doing that in 2025, but that class is going to get built out a lot more in the coming weeks. Jordan Davison, a 4-star running back, is a guy I definitely watch for in the coming weeks. I don't remember what his commitment timeline is, but that's a name that Oregon's after. Their defensive prospects as well. So I like where they are at. The class is just still kind of in its early stage, and I think by the time the season starts, we'll have a clearer picture.
Do you feel like with the transfer? I'm sorry, go ahead, Raj.
No, sorry. I want to say regarding Jordan Davidson, I want to say he posted something on Twitter today. It was something to the effect of like, "Are y'all ready?" or "Are y'all ready to?" Something to that effect. So I'm not sure if he's going to make an announcement. I don't know. Sometime soon. I honestly don't know what that means. That could be really, really vague. So
I mean, it can be a lot. It can be a lot of different things, man. I mean, it can change. You're dealing with 17, 18-year-old kids. Exactly. End of the day, like I mean, their mind could change, or someone could get in their ear, or they could just decide on a whim to not commit when they were going to, or cancel visits. Like there are all sorts of factors at play, and I can't hold it against them. I don't know what it's like to be recruited like that when you're 18 years old. I know I'm 26. I'm a lot more mature now than I was 8 years ago, and I don't know how I would have handled all of that. And so like it can be a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, and to add to that too, man, being that age, I can't imagine being 17 and having multiple offers on the table. Where
how about the kids that get offered in 8th grade?
Thank you. And it's like
that's weird.
I'm supposed to be 17,
crazy, but
and somebody's like, "Here's $1 million. Here's $1.5 million." Oh,
yeah,
8th grade, and these are the decisions I have to make.
Yeah. With NIL being a part of it. Yeah. Like that makes it even more complex. And Oregon basketball, I know this is a football show, but just as an example, their starting point guard last year was a true freshman by the name of Jackson Shellstad, whose favorite player growing up was Peyton Pritchard, who just won a championship with the Celtics. They both went to West Lynn, which was at my rival high school. I went to Lake Oswego, and I did not care for West Lynn, but that's okay. And Shellstad, went to Oregon because I think partially because Pritchard went there, but partially because Dana Altman first reached out to him. First, I think, went to go watch him play in 8th grade.
That's crazy.
Eighth grade. Like,
that is crazy.
It's going to be 5 years before that guy sets foot on the court. But if you're not going after prospects early in their careers, if you don't have offers on their table by the time they're a sophomore in high school, and they're a highly rated 4 or 5-star guy, guess what? You're behind.
Yeah.
And once you fall,
sad truth.
Yeah. And once you fall behind, it's really hard to make up ground, because you got heavy hitters out there on the trail, and Oregon goes after those sorts of players that are looking at Georgia or Alabama, Ohio State, any other great recruiting school in the country. So that's just the nature of the beast, and it's a 24/7 endeavor.
You're right. Oh, and to clarify too, we'll talk about any sport on here that's interesting. So last week on the Oklahoma show, we started off with Oklahoma softball. So
dude, they're a wagon.
Yes.
I did not think after UConn women's basketball, we would see another dynasty of that level. And part of the reason I didn't think that, and why I can argue that the softball four-peat is more impressive than the basketball, I mean, it's close. But one thing that I see, and I see this as a play-by-play announcer for college sports as well, is there is a groundswell of growth in women's sports right now. You see that with television numbers, but you also see it in the amount of attention, excitement, and investment that exists in a particular sport. And so when that is at a lower level, I think it's easier for a team to dominate, because if you have a high level of investment, there aren't that many schools and programs that are putting that behind, a sport like softball, or, baseball has been dominated by the SEC because they've really invested in those particular programs in their athletic department. Women's basketball has, of course, skyrocketed in the last few years. You compare the college basketball scene for women's basketball now compared to when UConn did it. I'm not saying those UConn teams wouldn't win 4 straight titles now. I think it would be a heck of a lot harder than it was. Like the favorites still dominate on the women's side, but you're starting to see more upsets because you're starting to see greater investment. You have more girls starting to play when they're young, so the talent is more spread out. Whereas, you compare it to the men's side, and you can see a 16 beat a 1 or a 15 beat a 2 3 years in a row. A 14 seed or higher has never won an NCAA women's tournament game. That'll happen one day. But it takes time. It takes generations and such. And that's why I was so impressed with the softball run that Patty Gasso's team went on, is that sport has been one of the fastest growing collegiately in the United States, and I think in high school as well across the country. And you're seeing programs have a lot of really good players, and it's become a pretty solid television draw too. And for them to win a fourth consecutive, I just, oh man, that freshman class knows nothing but national championships. That's crazy.
Yep.
That is crazy. And it's interesting to me too. I don't want to say more stock on it. I don't want to ever take away from anything that they had passed. But in the era of the transfer portal, and your top teams across all sports have like no depth, that's to me, like even the UConn, back to back with like almost all new teams, like these things are amazing to me. And 4 in a row is just like, I mean, I'd retire right then and be like, all right,
just say, you know what? I have done my due diligence here.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan Hurley is clearly not going to ride off into the sunset because he says, yeah, let's run it back. But, I can't see it. He can't win it. He can't win 3 in a row, right? 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 Like, that's not a thing.
I think Alabama's going to have a lot to say about that, too, this year.
Yeah, Alabama's going to be good. Yeah. Bringing back Jalen Sears, that dude's a hooper. Yes.
Yeah, Mark
I mean, but definitely to the other point, the recruiting class and, the transfer portal. It's like you have to mix all those things, which kind of led me to a question when you're talking about with Oregon and the top 10, top 5 classes. With the transfer portal, do you kind of see it ever being like your recruiting rankings? We'll put a little less weight on them with the transfer portal. Will there ever be kind of a blend of rankings? Like, how do you see the transfer portal really affecting how the high school, how we look at our high school recruiting classes? I
think it's a great question for any football program. And 24/7 has 3 different metrics they use to evaluate a recruiting cycle. They rank your portal class, they rank your high school class, and then they combine them to give you a composite rating. And I think that composite rating is going to be the best metric to determine annual success, but not the only one, because it's very program dependent. Right. If Georgia has 3 straight top 5 recruiting classes and they don't have a mass exodus like Texas A&M did this past offseason with a coaching change, if they bring in the 40th best transfer portal class, is anyone going to say they don't have one of the 5 best rosters in college football? I don't think that you can. Right. So I think you truly can look at every single metric, and you will see programs like Colorado or Chip Kelly at UCLA was this way. Lincoln Riley has been this way, but I think is shifting with good reason. You'll see some programs lean heavily into the transfer portal and have that be the primary way that they build a roster. I think that has its merits. I don't think you can do it entirely. So, if high school recruiting in terms of reflecting or evaluating how talented your roster is used to be a 9.9 or a 10 out of 10 in terms of importance, I think it's been cut down to maybe a 7.5. Mm-hmm. But on Dave Portnoy's pizza review scale, that's still a damn good pie.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's still making up most of, what rosters look like. And, you'll see some like Oregon last year, I think was majority of their starters were high school recruits. This year, I think it's a majority of their starters are one-time transfers. Some of those guys are returning transfers, like Jordan Birch transferred from South Carolina last year. He's back and he's going to start this year. Like, that's a transfer, but it's not a brand new transfer. It is what I mean. So I think that it depends on what program you're looking at. And for Oregon, I think they could do it either way. They can be high school heavy and supplement with the portal, or they can be portal heavy and supplement with high school. But I think what we can say definitively, you can't be all one way or the other. Agreed. I don't think you can do what Clemson is trying to do and win a national championship. I also don't think you can do what Colorado's trying to do and win a national championship. Right. I don't see that as a model for long-term success, because the other thing with the portal, typically when you bring guys in, there are exceptions. There are absolutely exceptions. The vast majority of transfer portal additions are not staying for more than 2 years. Most I don't have numbers like off the top of my head, and I'm just thinking about Oregon here. Vast majority are 1-year rentals. Some guys are 2-year players, like a Jordan Birch, for instance. But, Oregon's transfer portal class a season ago, it had Kyrie Jackson transfer from Alabama, 1 year. It had, a couple years ago, they brought in a guy in Bucky Irving. He had 2 years before he went to the NFL. Noah Whittington came in that class. He's going into his third season. He got ravaged by injuries, unfortunately, a season ago. Those guys are not quite as common. Like, they brought in Jabbar Muhammad from Washington at corner. He's going to be a 1-year rental, and that's fine. They brought in Brandon Johnson from Duke. He's a 1-year rental. That's fine. Are you always going to be able to find all conference caliber players that are 1-year rentals over and over and over again? That's why you have to have a combination of transfer and high school recruiting, and you can lean more heavily one way or the other, but I don't think you can have more than like a 70-30 split in either direction to put together the best roster in college football.
No, I agree.
I agree.
It's interesting you brought up those two situations too, with Colorado and Clemson on the outside.
Polar opposites. And you're going to have talented players that come in via the portal of Colorado. You're going to have a lot of talented players that were high school recruits at Clemson. It just feels like both are going to be behind schools in their conference roster-wise that use both.
Agreed.
How much longer do you think Dabo can sustain this mentality of not embracing the portal before Clemson decides to make a coaching change? Because obviously Clemson's nowhere where they were a few years ago back when they had Trevor Lawrence as far as making the playoff and making national championship appearances.
No, but they don't
see that
suck.
happening. They don't suck. But I'm pretty sure the program and their fan base wants to get back to that sense of notoriety. And their first game this year, they have to play Georgia. So
good luck. Good luck with that one. I've watched a team that had conference title aspirations play Georgia in a neutral site game in Atlanta. It didn't go well. Shocker. So.
Yes. Put that out of your mind, though.
I think this year, for Dabo Swinney, it's going to determine the warmth of his seat. I don't think there is any hot seat talk going into this year. I think if this year is a 7-5, 8-4 year, next year, hot seat. Right. I don't think there is a scenario. I think Clemson's going to be too good of a team for them to fire him after this season. I don't think there's really a realistic scenario where Clemson fires Dabo Swinney after this year. I think this year is going to be a really, really big one for what you're talking about. Because if they go 9-3 this year and barely miss the playoff, I don't think you can look at his philosophy and say, well, it's not working. This is just no good. Like, no, you can't. Like, if you want to have that sort of standard, you can. But I think that is. I don't think Clemson would go in that direction. Not for a guy who's won 2 national championships. He's got too much. He's got too much respect within the athletic department and the program there. So if they go 6-6 this year. Okay, then you talk about, hey, you need to add transfers. Maybe we'll give this another year, but this isn't working. But I mean, if their win total according to FanDuel is 9.5, right, which is tied for the highest mark in the ACC. So if they go just over that and go 10-2, then everyone who says Dabo has to take transfers, you have to do this. Oh, I think you'd have to just tip your cap and say, okay, there's more than one way to do this.
Right.
And do they have a method to do this? Do they start pushing into the portal? And is there a way for them to do that, without making it look like a public thing?
Well, I've seen it happen before. There are coaches, I won't name names, but I know of coaches who have been resistant in various sports to NIL and the transfer portal. And then when things start to decline, the administration basically says, you're either going to play this game or we're going to go somewhere else. And then they start playing the game a little bit more. Right. I know that happens. And I think the outcome of this season will determine whether or not that conversation gets had with Dabo.
Right. I understand that. And from the outside, honestly, with the Dabo situation, it's like I look at the Georgia game and I guess the Florida State game. it feels like without a deep dive into their schedule, 10-2 would be pretty obtainable given the way the rest of the ACC plays, and you're probably in the ACC championship.
It's attainable. There's a game I need to pull up their schedule because I know there's one other game that I remember looking at and saying that is one that is sneaky difficult. They start with Georgia. They're going to lose that game. Appalachians to NC State.
You saw this, right? Clemson by 7, and I don't see that happening. That's
not gonna happen.
Clemson by 7 against Georgia.
Yeah.
No.
I got Georgia by 10 only because it's game 1. Had this been like game 4 or 5, I'd have Georgia by like at least 2 or 3 touchdowns. But I'm.
I think I've got Georgia. I think I've got Georgia by 20.
Yeah, I had them 14 minimum.
The line is 13.5. I think Georgia's going to cover. Maybe I'm just saying that as a scarred Oregon fan, but I think Georgia. Here's a hot take for your podcast, guys. I think Georgia's pretty sick this year.
There you go.
I think they're pretty sick, but
they're probably one of the best prepared teams for that first game of the year. You know, you see a lot of sloppy football. You just don't really see that from Georgia. It's like they've been playing games all summer, and they're just like, this is game 7.
Yeah. So there are 4 games on this schedule that I think are incredibly losable. The Georgia and Florida State games, they're going to be underdogs. They should be. Right. But they host NC State September 21st. NC State is a good football team.
Right.
That is a good football team. And then November 9th, they go at Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech is number 1, capable of being a good team this year. And number 2, they have a very easy front half of their schedule. So going into that game with Clemson, the Hokies and Brent Pry might be feeling themselves. And the crowd might be feeling the excitement of, are we back to late 2000s Virginia Tech when this was a top 10, 15 program in the country? I think between those 2 games, I won't be shocked at all if Clemson loses one of them. And, you know, those 4 games are the toughest that Clemson's got on their schedule. Georgia at Florida State, host NC State, and at Va Tech. So basically 3 of those games are on the road. They're not losing all those games, but boy, one win in those 4 contests feels entirely possible.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree.
And they have Louisville before Virginia Tech, but honestly, I don't know how good Louisville's going to be this year. So
Louisville will be good.
Right now,
Louisville will be good. My eyes must have just glossed over that on the schedule and jumped to Virginia Tech.
They host Louisville November 2nd. That's the week before they go
hosting Louisville. Yeah, not as worried about that. Like, I think Louisville's a good team. I don't know if they're great, but they're good. They're a good, capable, solid team. But at home, I think Clemson would get that done.
Yeah.
What's up, Alex? Appreciate you tuning in.
Appreciate you, Alex. Thank you.
All right, so kind of bringing it back to Oregon, which that was an interesting dive into Clemson. So I did not foresee that on there, but that was
always roll with the conversation. Always roll with the conversation.
I posed the question on Dabo. I didn't know it was going to go there, but hey, it's always good.
I have a tendency to do that, especially now that I talk about these teams all the time. Like a year ago at this time, I would have had casual thoughts on Dabo. Now I have like passionate, in-depth thoughts that I've laid out on my show several times.
Let me tell you, it comes out in there. So man, I appreciate that. So for sure, you really impressed last year too on the show, man. The coworker
I try.
Was very, oh man, that guy was great. Although he's going to be embarrassed. I hope he's not listening. He goes, yeah, that black guy that was on there talking about Oregon, he was great. I was like, I said, Spencer? He said, yeah. I said, I had to pull the video off.
Was that guy?
I said, were you watching in the dark? Like, I don't know.
I mean, like, I play a lot of golf and my skin tans incredibly well, but like, guys, let's look around the room. These 3 things are not the same.
Spencer Wood.
I said, yeah.
You know what's funny is I in college, I swear to God, this is all true. In college, I did a little stand-up comedy, and it was really fun. Wow. It's very hard. It's very hard to do good stand-up. But in the set that I had that I did very well, I told a story about how in high school I had a woman giving me a haircut, and she just like randomly asked if I was black. And I was just like, no.
I don't know.
But then in my head I was like, What was your next question? Where were you? Like we weren't talking. This was just like out of the blue. She was thinking of starting a conversation. I'm like, why is that your starting point? What are you getting at?
We should have said yes to find out. Definitely.
Exactly. Spencer was like, yes.
I definitely did not say yes.
Yes. Well, and she's cutting your hair. That would worry me a little bit.
I mean, I was just like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. My hair is like in between being straight and curly, so maybe that was throwing her off, and she was wondering. I don't know. I don't know where that was coming from.
Everybody is loving the story. So this is Bo's on 2 different shows with Bo, Monday mornings and Wednesday mornings, 8:00 Central Time. So Bo's like in the West
Bo
Coast.
Crouch,
so
football talk with Bo.
It's like 4:00 in the morning or 2:00 in the morning for him when we do those shows. But that's his mom. Good evening, sir. Hope you're doing all right. And then you have another question popping up there. So do I post James's comment even though it's from our little brother? Or do you just want to acknowledge James?
We cannot post that.
Okay.
We cannot post James. We
Well,
appreciate you for jumping on.
I mean, look at it this way though. The team that James is plugging there lost at home on a 4th and 31.
Yes.
How bad does it feel to mention that team?
Yes.
As someone whose team has lost 3 straight games to its heated rival, like I try to avoid saying that word at all costs. And if it were the other way, I'd mention it all the time because then I'd just be thinking about the games.
James is one of my best friends, but this is something that he and I just go back and forth about. It's funny. I don't know. He has to represent his team, and he roots for the other team in Alabama, and I get it, and I respect it. But
he roots for Troy
for him sometimes. No, that was a good.
He pulls for Jacksonville State. Crazy.
Yeah. Big UAB fan there.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get you Big Mike's question in there. First thoughts on Oregon joining the Big Ten?
Oh, well, had to do it, unfortunately. Hate that they had to do it, though. Definitely was not my preferred outcome. And funny enough, when they, along with Washington, announced they were going to the Big Ten and the Pac-12 collapsed, and I recorded an emergency show, I was supposed to be on vacation.
I tuned in. I remember that.
Yeah, I was wearing this shirt. I was wearing this exact shirt. I was in the San Juan Islands, and I was with my parents on a boat trip, and I was supposed to, not do any like I'd recorded shows ahead of time. It was all good, and then that happened. And I was like, all right, well, I guess we're gonna see if I can do it on the Wi-Fi up here. Like, let's see what we got. But I think the move makes a lot of sense. Someone asked me a question one time: did going to the Big Ten keep Dan Lanning from taking the Alabama job? I hadn't thought about it like that. I think that's entirely possible because I just wish that everything had stayed the same. I wish Texas and Oklahoma were in the Big 12. I wish USC and UCLA had stayed in the Pac-12 and everything had stayed the same.
Agreed.
Once USC and UCLA made that move, could Oregon have succeeded in the Pac-12? Yes. Would it have been as fruitful on a scheduling and recruiting front as the Big Ten? No, it would not. And I think the perception would be worse than the reality, but perception often influences people's realities. And so that's just kind of where the chips fell. Like you can't look at the opportunity to be in the Big Ten or the SEC right now and say you should be somewhere else or you'd rather be somewhere else. You can't make that case. You can say what I always say, which is I want to be somewhere else. I wish they could be somewhere else. But the Big Ten is the best place for them to be if they're not in the SEC, which of course hasn't had to expand, out of its southern footprint, which makes it, wildly impressive. So I think that for the Big Ten, Oregon comes in as a heavy hitter right away. They're one of the 2 conference favorites. They should be. They're, a 1-point home underdog to Ohio State. I think that's kind of crazy to be an underdog at home. I think it's possible they go undefeated this year. Just to be clear, I am not predicting that. I am just saying it is in that range. That is a possibility. If Oregon is, a 1-point underdog at home to Ohio State, they're probably a slight favorite on the road against Michigan, meaning they'll be favored to win 11 of their 12 games this year, according to FanDuel. So I think they're really well positioned to maintain a high recruiting level and maybe even build upon it just a little bit and stay at the big boy table in college athletics. And, it stinks because I grew up with the Pac-12 and I wish it had continued. But like the move just unfortunately felt like it had to be made, even though I didn't want it to be made. It's just the way that the chips have fallen. And, I'm just bummed because, like I said, I grew up watching, the Oregon rivalry known as the Civil War with Oregon State and playing Washington State. And, we're going to keep playing Washington. Okay, great. But I liked Utah being there, and I wasn't really that bummed about Colorado leaving. Like, Lanning's reaction was so funny when he got asked at a press conference, what's your reaction to Colorado leaving the conference? And he goes, I'm trying to remember what they won while they were here. Did they impact this conference in a major? I don't know. I didn't hear. And then, of course, went and blasted them 42-6. Yes. So I just grew up with those teams, Cal and Stanford, USC, UCLA, the Arizona schools. Like, I have a lot of memories of watching Oregon play those teams, and now the random games are going to be Illinois, Maryland, Michigan State, and Purdue. And, Ohio State and Michigan, that's all good and fun. And going to Wisconsin's really cool at Camp Randall. I don't care about those teams. Like, I care about Oregon, obviously, but I don't care about those teams. One of the things that a friend of mine texted me after it got announced, and I was saying, like, I'm pretty bummed. I didn't have to come to this, wish I hadn't and everything. He was like, oh, man, think about Oregon's uniforms at a Penn State whiteout. I'm like, that's sick. It'll look cool. I'm not denying that. But I don't care. I don't I didn't grow up with that. I didn't grow up with that. I want the little intricacies and the history of the history of us going down to the desert and why that's a scary place, or the farm against Stanford. That's what I grew up with, and I'm a very nostalgic person. So that was my first reaction, about as short as I can keep it, when Oregon went to the Big Ten.
So you mentioned that Oregon, there's a good chance that Oregon can go undefeated, and of course that's just it's in the
realm. There's a chance.
Right. And Herb and I have predicted it's either going to be, not off the show, but it's either going to be Oregon or Ohio State. I think a lot of Oregon's success is going to be dependent on how good Dillon Gabriel performs this season. With that being said, do you think he's the best QB in the Big Ten in 2024?
I do, and I like Dillon Gabriel. I think he's good. I think he's good enough for Oregon to compete for a national championship. He is not Bo Nix, and Oregon fans in the past have taken that as a slight. But, I mean, Bo Nix just, set Oregon single-season records in passing yards and touchdowns. Saying you're not that is not some huge slight or knock or testament to how not good he really is. It's just who he is. He's good. And I think this year he's the best quarterback in the Big Ten going into the season. I think, Drew Aller, Dylan Raiola, or Will Howard could surpass him if, they really start to pop. But I look at where Dillon Gabriel would have been in the Pac-12 quarterback rankings last year. He's like fifth. You have Michael Penix, of course, was amazing. Bo Nix was amazing. Caleb Williams was the number one pick in the draft. Didn't even have a great season. Well, USC didn't have a great season. Caleb Williams himself was great. Shedeur Sanders, for all the nonsense that surrounds that guy in the program and everything, he's a really good football player. If you just take out all the off the field, he was taking a beating last year as well, and he still put up really good numbers. He's really good. So Gabriel you could make the case for Gabriel to be above Shedeur. That's fine, but I've watched Shedeur Sanders. He's really good. And I was listening, I asked the question going into last season on Locked On Pac-12 at the time, RIP, whether or not, he was going to make that transition. Just hey, that's a question. You're going from the FCS to the FBS level, that's different. Can he make that adjustment? And then it became clear pretty quickly, oh, yeah, no, he can do that. He's just fine. And I was listening to this podcast host who put it in a really funny way that made me laugh at the fact that I even asked the question. He goes, I was watching Colorado and Shedeur Sanders was tearing it up. Yeah, big surprise. Deion Sanders' kid is good at football. Huge shock. And I thought about it Yeah, damn.
enough.
big surprise. His kid is good at football. Yeah. So I think Gabriel is good. I think he's the best in the Big Ten. I think it's a weak lineup of quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and there's nobody I'd rather have than Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah.
And
how do you feel about that? Go ahead, Raj.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no. But I remember our talks about how strong the lineup was for the last year of the Pac-12 quarterback.
Dude, it was the deepest conference in the country.
Yeah.
How does that feel like going to one where you're like, my guy is like number 1 or number 2 walking in the door? You know,
it gives me as an Oregon fan a lot of confidence. You know that they're going to be able to compete at the level that they're capable of. A lot of teams are good on paper. Texas A&M been good on paper for a long time, not as great on the field. The reason I have more confidence in Oregon is last year they were really good on paper. And guess what? They were really good on the field. And they just couldn't get through your guys' new head coach who, you know, I talked recently on an episode of Locked On College Football that we might just be overthinking Alabama because
I was listening to that today just to get ready.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that DeBoer is just so good. Like his career record is bonkers. Like it's insane as a head coach. And you can say, well, he was at the NAIA level. Well, it's not like he was playing NAIA schools with an American Athletic Conference team. He was playing with an NAIA school and he won a couple national titles. He's like 104-12. You know, that's his career record as a head coach. And they have a tough schedule, as you guys know. There are some challenging games on there. But that guy's so good. My biggest question is how Jalen Milroe fits, because I think they have kind of contrasting styles. Yes. And, you know, Grubb isn't there as the offensive coordinator, and it'll be Sheridan, right, is going to be the OC. So, you know, I'm interested to see how that all plays out. I'm inclined to think that Milroe will have a great year because DeBoer's probably the best offensive mind he's had in his ear so far in his college career. You know, Tommy Rees, I think, is capable and is fine as a coordinator, but
those don't sound like compliments, by the way.
Yeah, well, he's fine. You know, like
that won't be on the commercial. Yeah, he's capable. Sure, he's fine.
Tommy Rees is capable.
When you put it that way, yeah, it is. Like I don't think that he's bad. Like Brian Ferentz is bad. Okay, that's a bad offensive coordinator. That's a guy who is not good, not capable.
Yeah. Right.
Tommy Rees was not ever blowing me away as Alabama's OC as some others had, and I think the testament to that is he's not a head coach in college football right now, whereas every other OC that Alabama has had recently has been. You got Bill O'Brien, who's out of Boston College. You got Lane Kiffin, who's at Ole Miss. You got Sark, who is at Texas. And those have been the Bama OCs, right? Am I missing one?
Maryland.
Mike Loxley.
Yeah, I could not remember his name, but I can tell you where he went.
yeah, exactly. So I think, you know, there is an upgraded component there to having Kalen DeBoer, who's got a long track record. Like, look at the quarterbacks he's had.
And then Dable, too. I guess I missed that one, but yeah.
Yeah, look at the quarterbacks that DeBoer's had the last several years as a head coach and the numbers that they've put up. Right. He may not be calling plays, but his fingerprints are clearly all over the offense. And, you know, Jake Haener at Fresno State, baller, just a freaking gamer. Penix the last 2 years went from a guy who was known for getting hurt to a guy that was taken 8th overall by the Falcons, which is just...
Interesting.
You can never escape bad ownership, man. You can't. Yes. You can't get out of it. But
we're on the Pac-12 basketball tournament in 2012.
Whoa. And they're a cross-country powerhouse.
That's why I love Big Mike. Big Mike.
Yeah, I mean, Tad Boyle's a solid coach, but it feels like he's just so high floor, low ceiling.
Yeah.
It feels like they've got a tournament team every year, and they don't make the tournament very often.
Yeah. Say So's really smart, you know, they can read. So that's definitely what it if we were shooting a commercial for Reese and you said that, we'd be like, cut, okay.
Yeah.
Let's go over the line.
That wouldn't be the phraseology. That was just my gut reaction to it.
Yeah. And so that did bring me to one of the questions that we have asked everybody on the thing with the DeBoer thing. What was your initial reaction when Saban retired?
Oh crap! They're gonna steal our coach.
Okay. Before you,
dude, I remember. I remember exactly where I was when I heard that news. I was with my buddy Parker in Utah, where I live. I'm in Oregon for the summer, but rest of the year when I'm doing play-by-play, I live in Utah. And we were playing Sand Hollow, and we were on the tee at the par 3, 15th. And we were waiting for the green to clear. And he looked at his phone. And I never look at my phone during rounds other than to post my score. And he goes, bro. And I was like, what? Bro. And I was like, spit it out, dude.
Right.
Let's go.
Like the dramatics.
And he goes, Nick Saban retired. And I was like, oh my gosh. Well, I know what my lead on the Oregon show is tomorrow.
Well, I have a question for us. Like, we found out on the 10th, was it the afternoon or on the 10th or whatever, and then the next 48 hours was just complete chaos because we had no idea what was. Well, the only idea we had was going on was on Twitter, and there were so many different reports going. Dan Lanning was here. He flew to flew to Tuscaloosa.
Oh, yeah.
And the reports he never came.
Can't believe Twitter got a piece of information wrong.
Yes.
God, that's never happened before.
No.
Was there any truth to any of that? Because I don't know what was going on. Obviously,
he was never in Tuscaloosa. That did not happen. The whole thing about there's a chartered plane from Eugene to Tuscaloosa. Yes. He's there right now. That was literally all entirely a lie.
Who's reporting this?
People who are chasing clicks on Twitter, and there are a lot of those people.
Agreed,
so I do know for certain. I don't do a ton of like honest to goodness reporting. I'm mostly in the content creation business. I do know for a fact that the top target for the Alabama boosters was Dan Lanning. That is the guy that they were prepared to line up behind and give an offer to. That is 100% true. And the fact that he decided to stay at Oregon and then said the grass is damn green in Eugene afterwards, that was just a cherry on top. And what a world to be in where Oregon's coach says, I'm good here, I'll pass on the Alabama job. That's a great place to be at as an Oregon fan, because you know that all the investments and all the winning over the years has indeed meant something to the point where he looks at Oregon. And again, this goes back to the Big Ten conversation. If Oregon's in the Pac-12 with 10 teams that would have been Oregon, Oregon State, Washington, Washington State, Stanford, Cal, Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, and San Diego State, maybe he feels differently.
Right.
But nevertheless, here we are.
Yeah.
I agree with that one.
Yep.
All right, so we did talk about Oregon being kind of like one of the favorites, and I messed up the graphic because now, of course, it covers up the star of the show. So I'll just switch that around.
It's all good. I'm not Matthew McConaughey. Right? Like, I'm not John Good. I'm not John Goodman, but like
according to our viewers,
but if it's blocking Spencer's picture, I wonder if people think Spencer's black now.
Yeah. That's what we're gonna do. All right, so we have Denzel Washington on the show, and we're gonna look at so we're gonna look at their schedule. But looking at this schedule outside of like Ohio State, going to Michigan, do you see kind of like, is there any other part of the schedule that kind of jumps out to you? What's your schedule? Maybe it's a little too early, but what are you really?
It's too early for a prediction. Too early. This stuff has got to marinate for months before I will go on the air and say Oregon's record is this. They're winning these games, and here's why. 12-0 is possible. The win total on FanDuel is 10.5. It is that way for two reasons. Number one, the non-conference slate is incredibly manageable. Number two, they go to Michigan and host Ohio State. I think there is a strong chance their win total would be 9.5 if you flip the location of those games. If you hosted Michigan, the weaker of those two teams, and you went to Ohio State. So I think for their schedule, it works out really well, and they get a break in that sense. The games that are kind of that second tier of challenging are hosting Washington, who will not be a great team, but will not be a terrible team either. Right. And the rivalry will always fire people up.
They'll be capable.
They're capable, and all the pressure's on Oregon in that game. And the second one is the game they play before that, which is before their bye. They have a bye going before the Washington game, and they have at Wisconsin on November 16th.
Right.
Those games, like at Michigan, at Wisconsin, is Oregon really good enough to win both of those games? Because if they are, then they're good enough to go 12-0. Right. But those are two difficult Big Ten environments on the road, big crowds, good teams. Wisconsin won't be on Michigan's level. I think they'll be a solid, I think they'll be a bowl capable team. I've seen Oregon lose on the road to non-bowl teams before. So far be it from me to look at a team that, might end up going 7-5 this year in Wisconsin and to just write them off as, no way Oregon wins that one. Or no way Oregon loses that one. That is a game that I think is the biggest trap game, especially even though they have the bye the following week, with your next game being Washington, where all the pressure's on. Oregon's got to beat Washington this year. Lanning specifically needs to beat Washington. That Wisconsin game could be an absolute trap game.
We play Wisconsin as well in Wisconsin, so that can be.
You guys get them early in the year though. I think you'll be fine.
I think so too. They're not usually just the type of team that scares. I mean, with a little more physical, not as good offensively, and then having Murray, said, helps out.
I think
Luke Fickell's a good coach. Luke Fickell's a good coach.
This year are just a little different because obviously this is going to be a new product we put on the field, so it's going to be interesting to see how our season starts out and kind of trickles out throughout the season. But I am uberly excited. Cannot wait.
So let's say everyone's assuming it's Ohio State versus Oregon, right? And that we've already said it a million times on there. If it is not one of those two teams, if one of them falters, who do you feel like is number 3 in the Big Ten? Who do you feel like steps up there?
Well, the betting markets would have you believe it is Michigan and then Penn State. Or it might be Penn State and then Michigan in some combination
like Penn State there. And then Michigan, but
I think it is. Penn State's going to be a good team. I don't see them winning fewer than 8 games. I don't think they win more than 10, but they could win 10. They could absolutely be a 10-win team again and just not play in the conference title game and then go to the playoff at 10-2, which is what they would have done had the 12-team playoff existed, which I'm not a fan of, but that's okay. If the 12-team playoff had been around, in previous years, Penn State is the single greatest beneficiary because they made 0 playoff appearances, and they would have made 5. Right. They would have made 5 or 6 playoffs in that time because normally they just Mariners won. It's huge. What a great day this is. This is just a fantastic day all around.
Which, by the way, since you said that, just real quick, sorry. It's amazing to me that the playoff committee was like, all right, 2 isn't working. Let's go to 4. 4, we screwed it up. All right, go to 12. And I was like,
it's the Ron Burgundy. Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
That is
Brick, you had a pitchfork. Yeah.
Brick killed a guy. You should lay low for a little bit. One of maybe the greatest comedy ever. Certainly up there, Anchorman. But so Penn State's team that certainly benefits from that expanded playoff, and I think they're one of the top teams in the Big Ten. I don't know. Well, I do know why, but I'm higher than most on USC. There's this generalized narrative that Lincoln Riley is a bum-ass coach. And I'm like, thank you. I take my impressions very seriously, so I'm glad you like it. I don't understand why after one down year and then the changes get made that needed to be made before he really ever got to USC, why all of a sudden Lincoln Riley sucks. Their schedule is brutally hard. Their win total is 7.5. That might be my favorite over bet in the Big Ten. And I don't know if I have a close second for a favorite over bet according to FanDuel, because I think they could beat LSU week 1 in Las Vegas. They're a 6.5-point underdog. I think they can absolutely. I think they can
say that to SEC country.
Oh, I'm sorry, but USC is a good football. USC is a good football team. Here's the thing: I don't think their defense in 1 year is going to suddenly be elite to make them a national title contender.
Right.
But that's not what everyone was clamoring for last year, whether it was Joel Klatt or Josh Pate or any other national pundit or people who covered USC or people who talked about him like myself in a smaller capacity. Like, all USC needed was an average defense last year, and they're not a 7-5 team in the Pac-12. They're probably 9-3 or 10-2 if their defense is just average. And go look at the transfer additions that they have made. They brought over a couple guys from UCLA whose defense was sick last year. Oh, by the way, they brought in UCLA's defensive coordinator. And we've all known for years that Alex Grinch was the problem. So you remove that problem, you bring in quality transfers on the defensive side of the ball, you have to be better. I don't think they're going to be as bad defensively. So if the defense is taking a step forward, which I firmly believe it will, then you just need to think about the offense. And Miller Moss is the least proven quarterback that Lincoln Riley's gone into a season with, and maybe the least hyped quarterback he's ever had as a head coach in college football. Right. But that dude played the ACC runners-up in Louisville and spun it for 420 and 6 touchdowns. Now, maybe he's Matt Flynn for my Seahawks long, long ago, where he had that big game, signed him to a big contract, somebody else beats him out. But Miller Moss looked good, and Miller Moss was not some slouch recruit. He's a blue chip guy. Right. So I don't worry. I never worry about Lincoln Riley's offenses. The narrative with him correctly is, well, does he have a defense? He's going to be able to play defense. Well, you look at the moves they've made, and you'd have to say that they made a home run defensive coordinator hire, and he's brought in transfers, and as I was talking about earlier, the high school ranks, he's starting to recruit defensive players out of high school at a better level than he was previously. Like, I get the Lincoln Riley hate. So I get why it's there. I just don't happen to agree with it. Like, they had a down year. He had a blind spot. Yeah. Okay. You're going into the Big Ten, and people like to paint this picture. Well, you got to be physical in the Big Ten. You got to do it. Yeah, okay, that's completely fair. You know, Iowa was a big physical team last year, and Tennessee dog-walked them in their bowl game with a backup true freshman quarterback starting for the first time 35-0. That door can swing both ways. There's an element of randomness to college sports, and that door can swing one way in which the teams that are used to playing really, really good defense but not great offense just can't keep up. Iowa couldn't keep up with Tennessee. And it can go the other way, too. Utah beat USC 3 times in a row. How? They were more physical. Yep. 100% a week. Like, it can go either way. So, I think USC is a better team than people realize. And if they have a brutally tough schedule, and there was all this flack like, oh my gosh, they tried to get out of LSU game. Of course they did. Of course they did. Speaking of the SEC, no offense, but you guys are not always known for playing the biggest non-conference games. Like, the biggest SEC games every year are typically in the conference. Georgia, Florida, Georgia, Bama, Bama, Auburn. Go up and down the Tennessee, Florida. Like, they're conference games. But Nick Saban never went anywhere for, a big non-conference. They would always do what Georgia's been doing, which is they play these neutral site games. And so USC's taking all this flack, and I'm like, SEC teams don't leave the South. Like, SEC teams, they don't leave. Yeah, like Georgia played Oregon in a non-conference. Great, they played them in a neutral site.
And there's Randy
in Atlanta. They played them in a neutral site in Atlanta. Anyway, so I don't blame him for trying to get out of that game because he needs to win. The pressure is absolutely on him, whether it's justified or not, and I think they will. I think if USC goes 10-2 this year, I'm going to take some fat victory laps on Locked On College Football.
We'll also say hello to my wife for the night.
Oh, nice.
Love you. Thank you.
About to head down to the beach with her in a minute, so that's a good note.
I'm about to head down to the beach with her.
Jeez.
You're on vacation, okay?
Oh, I had to mention it.
That's just that's a nice subtle flex right there. Like, my wife is tuning in, and we're gonna go hang out at the beach later.
Yeah.
Really. Sorry, guys. Have a margarita. All right, we're gonna give you a couple quick questions of death before we let you.
All right, sounds good. Hit me with them.
All right, first one is up. It's work, play, live, and then Raj has added ditch to it. So work, who would you want to work with 40 hours a week? Play, who you heading out with on Friday night to have a drink? Live, who do you want as your next door neighbor? And ditch, who is the person when they call you to go out on that Friday night, you let it go to voicemail. You're ignoring this person.
Are these like people in my social circle or famous people?
No, I'm going to give you the names.
You're about to find out.
Okay. So the options are ditch, work, play, live.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, Chip Kelly, Kalen DeBoer.
Oh boy. I would definitely want to work with Lanning. That's the easy one. I would probably want to
by the way.
I would want to live next to Chip because I think he'd stay very recluded and not like be very loud and boisterous and bother you. And I also think Chip Kelly's pretty into golf. And as an Oregon fan, I would love to golf with Chip Kelly. So I'll live next to Chip. I'll work with Dan. Play and ditch between. I have to ditch DeBoer. I can't. That's just too much PTSD. It's PTSD for me, guys. I'm sorry. I'll play with Ryan Day and I'll ditch DeBoer. I like. It's not that I don't think he's an outstanding coach, but like every moment I'd be around him, I'd just be thinking about three of the most gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, disastrous losses in Oregon football recent history.
You gotta let it go.
I can't let it until Oregon beats Washington. You can't let it go. That's the beauty of college football.
Yeah.
Like you lose a game and you got to sit with it for a year. Yeah. What's that?
Did you see our reaction when you said ditch DeBoer? We acted like it was
it was just so personal. It just hurt me right here.
I know. It's not because he's at Bama. It's just because of what he did. He ripped my heart out of my chest last year. Last 2 years, 3 times in a row, 3 straight 3-point losses. Just, gosh. So I'd have to ditch him.
Fair enough. Raj, did you have one?
All right, question number 2. Yeah, so let's just say a big corporation, whether it's ESPN, Fox Sports, whatever the case may be. Let's just say they're watching this podcast right now. They say, Spencer, you did a phenomenal job. We want to give you your own podcast. We'll put up the money, pay you salary, blah, 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 blah. We need you to think of a name for your podcast, and it has to be a total of 4 people. Who are the 3 former Oregon football players that are going to be that you want on your podcast, and what would your podcast be called?
Names are hard. I'm not good with names, so I'll circle back to that. The 4 Oregon players. Oh man.
So I'm sorry. It would be you and 3 other.
Me and So me and 3.
People. Yeah.
LaMichael's my favorite player of all time, so he's got to be on there. Gosh, I gotta go back a ways. For an entertainment value, I think Kayvon Thibodeau would be very good.
Oh yeah.
I think Thibodeau would be very, very good. And then I gotta have a quarterback. And though I love Justin Herbert and he's a sharp guy, I mean he might be better media wise, but it'd be hard to not go with Marcus there, Mariota. So
I was wondering if you were going to bring that one up.
Yeah, I like only Heisman winner in the history of Oregon. Gotta have him there. But I don't know if it's a hot take amongst Oregon fans. I don't think it's like too hot to say that Marcus is my second favorite player and LaMichael is first. Because when I was a kid and Oregon was starting to become nationally relevant and people started envying Oregon, wanted to be like Oregon. Marcus wasn't actually at the forefront of that. LaMichael was. So,
Gotcha.
I had we had a poster in our bonus room growing up of Brandon Roy because we were big Blazers fans, and it said Portland's All-Star, and that was kind of like the first Blazers superstar that I rooted for as a kid, which is ironic because he's a Husky, but he's an awesome guy, and gosh, what could have been? But if you did that for. Man. Yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. The first Oregon superstar, you could argue, was Dennis Dixon, but it didn't get to that level because of his injury. Another what if. LaMichael was the first LaMichael was the first guy that was like the face of Oregon football as they ascended to a place they had not been before. So that's why LaMichael's my favorite player ever. But yeah, that'd be my trio: LaMichael and Marcus and KT. KT's good. KT's good on the mic.
Gotcha,
He's an entertaining guy.
Randy said
Awesome.
Dan Fouts. That's who he wants out there.
Oh man, Fouts is great. Fouts would be great too.
He's already wrecked your whole show.
I know. Fouts would be great too because Fouts is a broadcaster, so he'd probably be really easy. Like Mariota would be more about his play. I don't know if Marcus would be like the most loquacious individual whilst chatting on a podcast because he's a little bit more quiet. I think LaMichael's more talkative, and obviously Kayvon is. But yeah, from like a broadcast standpoint. I think Fouts is great on the NFL. He's done it for a long time, and he's really, really good.
I like the answer. All right, we're gonna give you one more, and we'll kind of wrap it up here since we did go over a little. Let's say Oregon plays Alabama in the national championship game.
I'd be so down.
You have, you're not doing your media. You've got seats at the 50-yard line. You're getting to watch, right? You have to bring one guest from this list, though, and only one. Okay? Herb or Raj?
Don't fumble this, Spencer.
You guys are killing me. What happens if I hit the red X on the tab that I have this StreamYard open in? What happens?
That would have been hilarious.
Just don't even say goodbye. Just dip.
Cat, it's not a setup. It's just
gosh, it is a setup, Cat. Like how a deciding. I don't even know what a deciding factor is. Can I flip a coin? I'm gonna flip a coin. You know what?
Wow.
That's what I would do. Cause like I like both of you guys, and so that's the only fair way to do it. So all right, here we go. Coin flip app, very useful application to have.
We are definitely in 2024.
We definitely are. Herb, you're going to be heads, and Raj, you're going to be tails. Herb's going with me.
Your phone's broke. It doesn't work.
So this is a funny fact.
Everybody likes Batman.
Randy will say that, but Randy has voted for Raj twice. So I'm 0-2 with Randy. So Spencer probably doesn't remember. I'm 1-1 with Spencer now because I remember last year he liked the question you asked better, Raj. So.
I remember that. I don't remember the question, but I remember that sequence, and I think you're right. So now I'm fair. A year changes a man. I'm a changed man, guys.
Yeah.
And there you go. There's your last mic. Subtle
flexes
on a golf course.
Yeah.
All right, Spencer. We appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, man. Love hanging with you guys. Fun talk.
What you got coming up next, or what you're working on?
Well, I'm hosting Locked On Ducks and Locked On College Football Monday through Friday, all year round, including throughout the summer. It's available, and they're both available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And I am the play-by-play voice for Southern Utah University as well for both a mixture of radio and TV. And I'll be up calling a game at Utah this year in Salt Lake City at Rice Eccles, a Big 12 team, as we all know. Yippee. And they're just thrilled to be in the Big 12. Absolutely thrilled. But then we go to El Paso as well to play UTEP out of Conference USA, and I've got that one circled as a potential upset. And it's been, I think, 9 years or so since Southern Utah's beaten an FBS team. Might have even been more than that. And that game against UTEP is one they could go in and win. So definitely stoked about all of that. But yeah, love coming on with you guys as always, and let's do it again.
Yes, sir, man. I appreciate you.
Of course. We appreciate you, Spencer.
Thank you, Kat, with the Roll Tide. Man, appreciate you always, man. Like I said, I continue to check out your stuff. It's always entertaining.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I love both shows. So, and I did say this earlier. When the Pac-12 started its demise, that's when I first picked you up, and I was like, I got to see somebody talking about this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as much as I hate it personally, it didn't hurt me professionally. Let's just say.
Yeah. Well, it's been a fun ride, man. We're happy to have you on and hope to have you on.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. See you guys.
All right, man.
All right, thank you.
For the Herb and Raj podcast, appreciate you, Spencer, for being on here. Raj, next week is Notre Dame coming up, so get excited for that one too as well.
Interesting.
And Randy, just so you know, we'll give your shout out real quick on there. Kat mentioned this. We did mention it in the beginning of the show.
Yes, congrats on
SEC.
That's huge for Randy. Congrats to Randy. Yes,
days, man.
Definitely.
Yep. So congrats to you, man. And Raj is in Dallas, man. Look him up while you're out there.
Yep.
For Raj podcast, thank y'all for tuning in, for us going over a little bit. I mean, Spencer's a great guest, man. We love to have him on here. And like I said, next week, Notre Dame. Everyone have a good night. I think I got a margarita waiting for me in a little beach. So, Raj, I'll talk to you later.
Another flex. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right,
have
man.
A good night, everyone.
Have a good night. Roll Tide.